Archibalds, two Archibalds, and an Archibald.
Hello and welcome to day 7 of our 12 Days of Archie series here on Draw, Lose or Draw. Today we're going to look back on the iconic 1-0 win over Morton at Firhill in the 2012-13 promotion season.
The first day of Christmas went through our victory, 5 Archibalds!
First up to talk us through Thistle's season up to that point is the man synonymous with that game, James Craigen.
Fantastic. Obviously, pre-season games went by. You know, we had a few great results in pre-season where I think we were pretty unbeaten there. And then obviously the league, the cup at that stage starts first, and then the league, and then we just got on this fantastic run. And you know, being signed, I couldn't get in the team. I was nowhere near the team really because I think the lads won the first 10 out of 12 games, and quite rightly so. That the manager took the faith with me, took the faith in those players. But no, it was great to be around. Training was fun. It was, you know, it was not overcomplicated. It was a lot of kind of like keep ball possession and then small-sided games, and all to a standard where, you know, people were competing all the time. And I thoroughly enjoyed, you know, when I first joined that group of players.
Yeah, that football was fantastic to watch during that season, and I feel we didn't know how lucky we had it at that point.
Yeah, because the thing that we played on the Saturday, that's what we were doing all through the week. We were playing like that, some of the one-touch stuff, the movement, the intensity and stuff like that. That was going through the week. So, you know, obviously you as fans get to go and watch that on a Saturday, but that's something that was just the normal really, and to actually, you know, execute that on a match day was fantastic. So, and also we had a bit of grit as well. We knew that we could. I think we went through a bit of a bad slump around Christmas time there when results went ahead, but you know, we had players in there that could, you know, say actually no, let's just tighten things up and be solid as well. So we had some good characters there. We had a bit of everything, and we were all, you know, I've done various things over the years and spoken about that team, but we all had players there who needed to and wanted to prove a point. They'd either been let go, told they're not good enough, or they were just forging away in their career. And Jackie had a great blend, and his recruitment was so good that there wasn't fantastic. No one was on big contracts and stuff like that, and everyone knew that they had to go and put on a show to forge a career out of football. And that's what we did.
The team were landed in a difficult situation that season as manager Jackie McNamara left midway through for Dundee United. But the man who took over, Alan Archibald, spoke to James Cairney for the Evening Times earlier this year about the challenges in taking over a team that was expected to continue to do well.
It was really strange. The whole thing was bizarre. The only good thing that set me in a good stead for it was Jerry had already asked me to do the under-17s. Jerry Britton was back at the club before that. Or one of the times I started doing under-17s and stuff. So I'd done my cruise ship when Ian was still in charge. So I got taken under-17s then towards the Jackie's just a year before he left. I started taking the reserves, still kind of bit part playing. We couldn't afford a youth coach, so to speak. So the Jackie said then I would do the reserves and I would train bits and bobs. I couldn't do the full training, and I was only in the team now and again. But he got a great young bunch of boys together to play. So when I took over, I was semi-prepared. I was semi-prepared in terms of dealing with a set-up of a team and stuff like that. Wasn't quite prepared because we were flying high at the top of the league just about, and then Jackie was leaving. The wheels had come off a little tiny bit in terms of we couldn't win away from home and things like that. So it was kind of sink or swim, because it's one of the ones if you go and you don't get promoted, it would be my fault, so to speak. So it was more all to lose than to gain, to be honest. But to be fair, the lads were fantastic. They were great. But I'm looking at that picture because that's the squad up there. But they were a great bunch of lads. You know what I found out in them as well, because I was still kind of in the coaching room and the changing room as well. You found out they were such a naive bunch. They'd never really been in a dressing room when a manager leaves. So as soon as the manager decided he was going, they were so vulnerable. They were so worried about who was going to come in next. Because I think probably 60% of that squad were all been rejected at bigger clubs. Stephen O'Donnell, Alan Taylor Sinclair, Conrad, Welshie. They'd all been binned for like Premier League clubs, and they'd worked with different type of managers who they didn't go on with or whatever. And Jackie was a totally different approach and gave them a platform and a freedom to go and play. So it made it easy to take them on. They just wanted security, they just wanted things to be the same. So to that aspect, it was very, very easy to take over.
Did you find it hard though, like going from being a teammate to now being, you know, the manager? Is it hard to sort of draw a line? Or?
A little bit, but I had a lot of respect, to be fair. I had a lot of respect because I was already at the dressing room. One thing Jackie said, he said, look, you're probably better kind of coaching room with us at the start of that season actually.
Right.
So I started getting changed in the coaching room, which was fine. Still went the nights out and stuff like that. They didn't tell you everything right enough. That's what happens in dressing rooms. But that made the transition a lot easier, to be honest with you. But I thought the lads were just desperate for me to be in charge because they wanted somebody new. They didn't want change, so neither did. So they were just desperate for me to get the job. Like most footballers, don't really, a lot of them don't like change. So they knew they were getting themselves. So it was quite a smooth takeover. But thankfully we kept on winning games, which.
Our opponents at Firhill that night, Morton, had been leading the title race for most of the season, as Morton fan Scott Barbour explains.
So Alan Neil remained in his post and we finished 8th the year before, and obviously thought, Christ, we need to make changes. And we only stayed up due to a poor air team, essentially, who finished 9th. And he went a wee bit mad, so like a wee bit of hope was placed in that Paul Di Giacomo. It used to be at Kilmarnock the season before, and he got bunted to Airdrie, I believe. I think nearly off the top of my head. But he kept a hold of a couple of players, managed to keep Archie Campbell, who is still playing in about 30 lower league somewhere. Kept Peter Weatherson, who could have went, who just seems to be involved in Morton for an absolute age. He'd obviously been in the South before that, but and this is around about the time where occasionally he would end up playing as a defender more often than as a striker, which is odd because he's like the third highest scorer in the club's history. He might actually be the highest scorer in the club's history. The only other players we really got to keep a hold of was Michael Tidser, who was our vice captain that season. David O'Brien played a whole bunch of games as well. He'd been there, and Thomas Aware, obviously in the Thistle, and would go on to become Morton captain. He broke through the year before, but he managed another 10 games. We nearly lost Fred Baccarou, who was obviously a big draw. Like, we had a guy that used to play for PSG cutting about at Capel. It was all very odd and quite exciting. So to keep Baccarou for another season, and then halfway through that season there was talk that if they don't get promoted, maybe we'll just move on to St Mirren, all that sort of stuff, you know, because that was the top flight. But there's a whole bunch of rebuilding that went on. The build up to the season. So Scott Taggart for Hibs, Willie Dyer for Raith Rovers, Martin Hardy for Dunfermline, Derek Gaston, used to be at Albion Rovers, that's now at Arbroath, unless he's moved on again. Craig Reid for Queen of the South, and Mark McLaughlin we got from Hamilton. Right, so he's a Greenock man, he'd supported Morton all his days, and they agreed to pretty much make him captain if he moved. So that's what happened. And then the season after, under Kenny Shields, he was cruelly released on Christmas Eve, which seems a bit, what a time to let somebody go, but but he was our captain that season, so it was like sweeping changes, and sometimes when you do that, particularly if you've had a season that was particularly good the season before, then you're going to struggle. And yeah, we had made a whole bunch of changes because we had to, but you're sort of thinking, particularly a Morton fan, finished 8th the season before, not expecting much here, right? We lose to Falkirk quite early on in the season, right? And as a Morton fan, you're thinking to yourself, same as usual, we'll take it as long as we don't need to have as much fear about potentially being relegated. We'll be quite sort of happy, and that's generally the expectations at Capel. As long as we're definitely still a second tier club, that's roughly our level, and it's like we've succumbed to that. Like we've not played in the top flight since the year I was born and stuff. But they then, very Morton, they went on a five match winning run, which caught everybody by surprise. Then drew the next two, so unbeaten in 7. Right? You're keeping into proper run. Your hope builds up a wee bit there. And then just at that, we lost to Hamilton at home. Right, first half of the season, we only actually lost 2 games, and both of them were at home, Falkirk and Hamilton. And then all the way up to the end of that first half of the season, till we entered 2013, we'd only actually drew one other game. So the first half of the season, we were uncharacteristically pretty good and flirting with top of the table. And just as we got there, on the 2nd, I believe, whatever the New Year Day game fell on, we get beat 3-0 at home for Dumbarton. right? So that's quite Morton-esque as well. Like, what were you thinking, right? And I think the stuff that starts to cost us as well is as soon as we had one bad result, normally we'd follow it up with underperforming the next game. A wee bit of like uncertainty creeps in. So like Cowdenbeath got a draw against them immediately after getting pumped out of Barbour. And then it looked like everything was back to normal.
Thistle's chances of winning the league looked to have gone as Morton collected all 3 points at Firhill on Boxing Day. However, a rough patch saw Thistle get back into contention.
But you would think, well, you've built up, you've won 4 in the bounds, Party couldn't beat you, let's kick on from there. Could beat half Hamilton again in March. So that bursts your bubble a wee bit. We'd lose to Rafe Rovers as well, about a month later. But there was wee signs that we could fling it away at any point. So like Turriff in the Cup, where St Mumfans took great time and going, how can you not beat them? If you are apparently getting promoted, what's all that about? Blah blah blah. It took a replay to beat them. So there was always wee signs that we weren't perfect, but far from it. But we were good at that level that season when we were the taking 8th at the start of the season. It came for absolutely nothing.
After crumbling under the pressure during the Ramsden's Cup final, the players were obviously nervous about then letting their chances of the title slip just a few days later. Archie explains the challenges that he had to try and keep the players focused.
My biggest memory of that game was we were shitting ourselves because we'd lost the Challenge Cup on the Sunday. Yeah. So that was the hardest. Was the Sunday actually? Sorry, so that was the biggest thing. I mean, that's one of the regrets.
Penalties, wasn't it?
That was in penalties. Got to penalties. And we probably didn't prepare for it as best. I mean, I was only just in the job and we're in the cup final, so we probably didn't prepare for it. I thought our preparation could have been better. In terms of with a lot of young guys playing their first finals. I mean, there's a couple of them that probably played their worst games that day because I think it was too much for them. Or they just hadn't been used to it. Yeah. It was a big crowd as well. But they showed great desire to go and win the Tuesday night game against Morton. It was a quick turnaround. I always remember going down the walk on the pitch the next day, had a cool down session, and speaking about the lads and speaking to them. These boys were like, oh, you can't play Alan Muirhead, he lost the plot and stuff like that, and you can't do this. But they served us so well. And the crowd that night was brilliant. It was one of the best nights that Firhill's had in a long time. I think if you asked any fan that, I mean, it was incredible.
I think at the time that was one of the highest ever attendances for in the modern era.
No, definitely. Do you know what I mean? I actually think it when we played Celtic out there last week with all the stands full of that, and it had that kind of feel about it. So it did.
Firhill was packed that evening, the biggest attendance there in years, and the kick-off even had to be delayed. Ian Bateman and Jamie McDonald look back on the crowd that night at Firhill.
The Morton game, the 1-0 game, I remember that night well. It was such a great game. So actually, I hadn't been going to Thistle for too long at that point. It was one of my first games. I remember that. Firhill was rocking.
Just fantastic atmosphere. Seeing all these fans, just you think, well, the first thing that comes to your mind is where have they all came from? Because you think we could do we use it Firhill every other week, but still great to see them all there, party hats on and everything, and the old ground was jumping, absolutely jumping, and then having to delay the kick-off to get the fans for the Jackie husband into the John Labby stand now, walking along the touchline. Brilliant.
I hadn't been to enough games to realise that we did not always get attendances that size, but it was just amazing to see that many people in Firhill. It was, I think, 8,800 or something like that. But it was a brilliant attendance. I've never seen it beaten since.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, sorry, on the Morton game, so that attendance, am I right in saying that's higher than our Old Firm games?
Right? Yeah, we've not had an Old Firm game that's topped it.
Yeah, obviously we're disappointed not to win that Challenge Cup final. That was probably one of our worst performances of the season. Actually, I don't think we were, nervous by the occasion, but we just didn't perform well. But yeah, we knew that we had to bounce back, and we did that. I remember leading up to the week, my parents were actually up from England. They had taken in the cup final, and because we were playing on the Wednesday, they just rented somewhere in the Trossachs, not too far away from Callander and Aberfoyle. So they were up for the week. So I actually stayed with them that week, and just for went to training and the build up to the game, and just travelled in. And it just felt like a normal game, but until we arrived, and then obviously we were doing the warm-up, and the kick-off got delayed by 15 minutes, and everything got kind of we start to think, well, actually, this is the big one here. This is the actual. This is whoever wins this is probably going to go on and win the title. And
game is just like touch and go, and all. It was probably one of the worst Fitba games ever. And then like such a scrappy game, and then James Craigen, I think it was just before half time, got that goal.
Back to James Craigen to talk through that memorable goal.
People ask me about the goal, and which is probably what I'm remembered for, and I always say that ball took an age for it to come to me, and it came all the way through. And I don't think it was intended for me. I think Squiddy kind of like said that not so long ago. And then it was, for my eyes, it was just hit the target, and I've caught it well, and it's flown in, and then a big blur for 20 seconds. I think I was jumping with the ball boy, and also all the teammates coming mob you and stuff like that.
We spoke to the ball boy that James Craigen mentioned there. Cameron Gray spoke to us earlier in the year about his memories of that special night.
I was normally like one of the older ball boys. I think I was the second oldest, but I'd been doing it for years at this point. So I was always tasked with like sitting in front of the away fans. But at that point, obviously, we were winning, and you would just start like winding people up. Like, just if they're shouting abuse at players, you just shout some back, just like as you would normally do in a stand. But with me being obviously so young but so close to them, there's some abuse that you would get taken. Like, which I don't know, like how much I can repeat on here, but it was like looking back on it was some laugh, but it was quite scary at times being like a 12-year-old, and there's like 40-year-old guys sitting just screaming at you. And like that Morton game in April was the big one. Right before we scored, somebody actually launched a pie at me, like so right at the back of my head. So it hit me, and I was I don't know what's going on, but I'm just like focusing on the game. And then Craigen obviously scores, and then I run round, because I was sitting right at that corner, so I run round, and James Craigen, like, he's coming through, and he's shouting like right at me, like that photo that's behind the shed, like as you're coming in for the toilet. Like, if you look at that, like if you actually zoomed that photo out, they've zoomed past like my head, because I run right for him. You can watch in the highlights, but I didn't even think about like celebrating with the players. Just like my best mate was sitting behind the goal, so I just wanted to get straight to him. So like the biggest moment I regret is like not celebrating that goal with James Craigen. I celebrated half, but I pushed him away so I could go and celebrate with my mate, and then immediately walking back to Morton fans in complete like despair, and then launching that pie straight back at them. And then getting absolutely rocked after the game for doing that, because like it was the amount of times you'd get told that, all right, you can't speak to fans or anything, like you can't wind them up, because like it's a pure health and safety issue. Like, what happens if they like take it the wrong way and they come and like try and do it? I was like, I'm 11, I'm not going to try that. But then there's times where you look back and you realise like why did I not just listen and just sit there and do my job? But it makes it better, I think, for like the fans.
What obviously will go down as one of my best moments and biggest moments in my career so far, and probably will be. But to see Firhill and Morton brought a lot of fans as well, packed, and it's just raw passion and emotion. Even like when we were hanging on for the last 10 minutes, it was something special, which is still hard to be replicated.
Yeah, just that night was absolutely fantastic. I hadn't been a Thistle fan for too long at that point, but I remember it very well. It was such a good night. Just the game was fantastic. It was so nervy the whole game. In the 90th minute, everyone was just whistling, trying to get the referee to blow the whistle. And the scenes at full time when Craigen scored, what a game! It's just I didn't appreciate it enough at the time. If we had that kind of thing now, pushing for the championship title to go up, big game like that, it would be amazing to just get to relive these kind of things.
Just great to see, of course, the result with Craigen banging that one in, and then wheeling away, just blowing the whistle, waiting the ref, finishing the game. And that was us. Great season.
James Craigen scoring the only goal in the game, to be fair, and it was good that he scored the goal, in terms of because every player in that squad played an integral part, so they all gave something, and James was always in the periphery, because at the time we had Stevie Lawless, Ross Forbes and Chris Erskine, Chris Dolan, guys like that. So James played a part, as well as the guys like Chris Elliott and stuff like that. So it was great that he got the goal, and I don't think there was any way we were going to lose after that. Things just go for you. We went to Airdrie, I think, the Saturday after that, and we scored. Chris Elliott scores in the last minute.
And then immediately after the Thistle game, instead of trying to like add a bit of pressure and chases a wee bit, even though for that wee sort of bit back, we lost to Dunfermline the week after as well. So by less than 10 days from the last game between Thistle and Morton, we were mathematically promoted, and then the wheels fell after Buggy. We actually lost the last 2 league games that people forget about as well. Again to Hamilton. Don't know why Hamilton were such a bully team, considering they weren't that good that season. And Falkirk. So that was pretty much our season, and obviously as Morton fans, you don't expect it to be as good, particularly the way they were sort of cobbled together that season. But it took us by surprise, and then obviously with Thistle were the big title rivals, and you beat them twice because they keep getting men sent off and whatever else, all that sort of helped. But yeah, at the end of the season was more traditionally Morton than the majority of it. The first half of the season we were really good in hindsight.
Here are the thoughts of James Cairney and David Forrest.
That game though, like obviously that was the big one. That was the absolutely massive one, and that was the one where I really thought that I was terrified going into that game. I remember being, I think it's because we've got this thing as Thistle fans, don't we, where it's ingrained in us that it's never going to go right. We'll go close and then we'll fuck up, because that's generally what we do. I mean, obviously the Challenge Cup final a few days previously is the perfect example of that, where it was just, I think if I had to describe Partick Thistle Football Club in one game and then just like, this is what it's like, you'd show them that game, So yeah, the Morton game was I genuinely think it was probably the most important game Thistle have had in a long time, to be honest, just because it set up obviously everything that was to come afterwards, and it was a real sort of culmination, I guess, of just years of disappointment. It felt really, what's the word? Like, it really felt like it was a huge release that day, because I was worried that I wasn't going to see Partick Thistle in the Premier League as it was at the time. Like, I was worried I wasn't going to see them there again for a long time, because despite the work that Jackie and then obviously Archie had done at the club, I think because we'd taken such a huge step back, basically ever since Lambie left before that, we'd never really proven ourselves to be a Premiership team from that point onwards, in my opinion. So to regain that standing within football, to regain that our place is, we're one of maybe probably about half a dozen clubs that would say that we're normally sort of bottom half Premiership, top half Championship, and that's our sort of natural place. But to regain that sense of, no, we are now a Premiership club, sort of back in the big time, blah blah blah, fine. But it really, that whole upward trajectory was where I really, really properly fell in love with Thistle again, because it was my first experience of supporting a winning team. Like, obviously as Thistle fans, you don't get that very often, so when it does come along, it's really quite special to you, I think.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like, this was sort of the first season I started going really to games. Not very often, but I'd basically spent my entire teenage years not really that interested in football. I'd still watch it and things, but I wasn't, going to games or anything like that. I had a sort of tertiary interest in it. There was other things going on in my life, but I remember this was like I just finished. Just finished being a student at this time, and had a bit of a bit of free time and stuff like that, and I started going, and it was a case of I remember this season every week putting a coupon on, because this was the year that Rangers were in the third division, I believe, and I put on a coupon every week with Celtic to win, Thistle to win, and Rangers to win. And I got so much money from that, and it was just so weird that I'd kind of not really bothered with football, and then landed at Thistle, so to speak, because I'd always liked them, but it was a case of this is when I first started going to games and all that, and landed at Thistle, and they were winning games, so I kind of missed a lot of that period of us being quite chronic and losing to Gretna 6-0 and stupid results like that. So it kind of didn't set me up very well that this was the first season I kind of took an avid interest in them, and it was a case of they were really quite good, and it kind of bred this into you where like we're actually quite good. We might people say that we're bottlers and stuff like that, but we're not, and clearly I was proven wrong on that after about 2 years. But yeah, like I know what you mean. Like it's just a case of seeing a winning team it feels bizarre now to think of the idea that Thistle could be an all-conquering team that like just put teams to the sword and stuff like that. We've spent so long in the Premiership kind of battling for survival that it's became a bit alien to ourselves. So no, I totally agree.
I think the thing with that season and then like the subsequent 2 or 3 as well was that obviously it gave you that sense of what Thistle could be, because before that I'd only known misery as a Thistle fan. Obviously you had the Lambie taking us up the leagues, but then after that, relegated, ended up down in League One or the second division, was it called that in? Yeah, second division. And then going away to games at I remember going away to game away at Morton that season, and I think we drew 1-1. But I just think that for so long I was just assumed that Thistle was just kind of my whole experience of supporting Thistle was just mediocrity, to be honest. It was, we didn't really make much of a dent in the cups. We didn't really make much of an impression in the league. And that season, the 12-13 season, that was the one where it showed that actually, no, this is what it can be. Like, we can play this entertaining, attractive football. We can, have a largely young squad that's really exciting. And then, but most importantly, that we can be successful, because I hadn't really seen that before. And you think, if you looked at upper clubs around Scotland at the moment, you look at some club like, I don't say Morton, and I don't like sticking the bit in just for the sake of it, but you think they've been in what sort of Championship, League One, for the last 20 odd years, something like that. It's been a long time. So you look at a club like that where it's like, you don't really do anything, do you? I mean, you occasionally get relegated to the third tier, bounce back up again, but that's about the extent of it, the odd promotion challenge, and that's it. And I think that's the good thing about Thistle, where it's like, the swing from like what a bad season can be and what a good season can be is dramatic. It's incredibly dramatic. I mean, you get real highs as a Thistle fan, but you get real lows too. But I love that about it. I love the fact that when we're low, we are low. But then when it's good, it can be great. And I think that's one of my favourite things about being a Thistle fan, is that you do get to experience that full breadth of emotion, which at other clubs you don't always do. And I know that probably sounds really dismissive. I really hope it doesn't come across that way. I don't want to sound like that, because obviously if you support your team, you support your team, and they're the most important thing, and that's fine. Doesn't matter if it's junior football or Champions League. That they're your team, okay. But at the same time, I'm really pleased that I do support a team that is interesting, where there are every season it's a battle against relegation or going for promotion, or we very rarely just sort of fart around the middle of the table and don't really do much. It's always interesting, which is fun and nerve-wracking, and it can torment you at times, but that's the beauty of football, isn't it?
7 Archibald, 6 Archibald, 5 Archibald, 4 Archibald, 3 Archibald, 2 Archibald, and an Alan Archibald.
Thank you for joining us on day 7 of our 12 Days of Archie series here on Draw, Lose or Draw. It was narrated by Matt Greer and edited by David Forrest, with contributions from David Forrest, James Cairney, Jamie McDonald, Kieran Ashton, Ian Bateman, Cameron Gray, Scott Barbour, James Craigen and Alan Archibald. Thanks to the club for allowing us to use the recording of the Alan Archibald interview, and as always, stay safe, wear a mask, and a happy new year when it comes.